Okay, so I am here in London and I'm just walking past Blackfriars, essentially. So the Thames, River Thames is just there, and I'm going to walk through there, but basically the pub behind me here is where I used to drink after I'd been working, the Blackfriars. And down there is the railway station and the tube station that I used to get a train from to go north where I lived. And as I was walking through London, it's like all these buildings. I realised that for me, coming and working in the city was very much similar to me going to boarding school. So I didn't fit in at boarding school. It was like this cold, kind of almost like a square, a round peg trying to fit into a square hole. I just couldn't fit. And it's very similar coming here to the city. And now that I understand more about the psychology of, trauma, but also about the British Empire, I think it's Michael Goldfarb who talks about how the British Empire morphed into the corporate world. And as I come into the city here, I'm like, yeah, this is so much like boarding school. Not fitting in, it's like, wow, and realizing that so many of the people who run the city, who run London, went to boarding school, so therefore it makes sense that they created a place where you have to put on an act, you have to put a mask on, it's that, very misogynistic place. You've got to work hard, you've got to, I heard so many stories of people working constantly. So, yeah, this just brings stuff up. It's like, yeah, we're not aware of the trauma which has created this city and which still kind of holds it in its grasp. So, yeah, I'll go and wander and see where I used to work. Okay, so behind me here, this street is where I used to work. This is my first job post business school. Worked for a basically an international publications company, a financial publications company, and I worked selling some of their financial courses, basically telesales. Make 50 calls a day, so 250 a week, and generally I'd sell one thing, of which I'd make a commission. So yeah, it's interesting being here. Just as I shared in my other video, it kind of just reminds me of boarding school in that I didn't fit in boarding school, and when I worked here I didn't fit in. I remember walking up this road, coming up here to work each day, and I had to psych myself up. I had to get myself into that, come on, you can do it. A bit like I did in boarding school. I had to psych myself up on the journey back to school. And realizing it's like, yeah, with how many people run the city who've been to boarding school. It's like, yeah, the city, London, on one level it's almost an extension. Certainly the city, the corporate world, is an extension for me of boarding school. With so many of our government having been to boarding school, so many judges, it's like, it feels to me as I'm here in the city a very cold and heartless place, a loveless place, very much as they say about boarding school. So yeah, it is interesting, and I'll just wander along here a bit and just have a look. It was just behind St Paul's Cathedral. They've got Playhouse Yard. I mean, all of these buildings, these weren't here when I was here. The company was just off here on the left hand side. I wonder if it is still here. I'm sure it was a few years ago. Fascinating. Maybe they moved. Mintel House. Yeah, so this is where the company was, in here, Mintel House. and I worked in that building there. I was on the 3rd floor. I think it was probably that window there is where I used to work. I was there for about a year and a half. So how fascinating to be here. But yeah, I really struggled in that job, got very depressed, started to think I was going insane, and basically had a breakdown while I was working there. And you know, in 2000 I left London completely, so I was here about 2 years, so that's it. Yeah, so now I'm stood in front of 2 of the other pubs that I used to go in. That one there, that used to be a pub there, and where I used to work was just down there, so I used to come out, and then St Paul's Cathedral is just down there. And as I kind of stand here and I record this, I realise that, again, the synchronicities, that I worked here for 2 years in the city, and then I worked probably about a kilometre that way in a place called Fleet Street, which is known for all the national newspapers, when I was working as a journalist. And I realised that my old boarding school was actually located about probably 2 minutes walk that way before it was told to leave London. So it was there for about 400 years, and I never realised that until I was here in London a few weeks ago, a month ago. I'd never realised how close it was to where I worked, and I'd never come across, there's actually a plaque up which says the name of my school. You know, it was located here in an old Greyfriars monastery. So it's really, really interesting that I didn't get that synchronicity. So yeah.